some people have said like, oh, is he going to go to jail if he violates a gag order or something like that? The legal experts I've talked to are not as, bullish on that. They're just saying like, the worst that could come out of this is that he has to, face a jury sooner rather than later. That seems to be the leverage that the judge is trying to do on this, because I don't think, it would be, I think most people would say it wouldn't be appropriate to like, throw him in jail at this point. I mean, I think he's been going up in the polls every time he gets indicted. I think that would probably, could have a similar effect.
Sure.
I don't want to speculate, but.
Welcome to Reporter's Notebook, where we talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the stories breaking on their beats. I'm Jim Antle. I'm joined today by Supreme Court reporter Kaelan Deese. Kaelan, the myriad legal cases against former president and current Republican presidential frontrunner Donald Trump. There's so many things to talk about there, so many different cases going on, different venues, different levels of government. Where in the big picture do things stand right now?
Well, I think the big picture that people really need to be focusing on right now in Trump's cases is that no matter which case you think is the strongest or the weakest against him, they're all in very early stages right now. So we keep talking about all these trial dates that are coming up. We know that in Georgia, in that massive RICO case, there's going to be a couple defendants there. They're going to be going to trial as early as October 23rd. But obviously the former president isn't going to be involved in that. And then there's some other trial dates that are being set out in early March, in the case that's alleging a massive scheme to defraud the 2020 election here in DC. So we're looking at, a lot of different, trial dates trickled out everywhere. And one of them that's kind of interesting is that in the beginning of October, Trump's supposed to be going to a New York civil trial over allegations of improper, inflating his assets with the Trump Organization. And that's really kind of like kicking off the season of Trump's legal, issues. Like that's going to be the first trial that he's going to be kind of facing from New York Attorney General Letitia James. Now, there's some complications happening right now because Trump has actually sued the judge that's going to be presiding over that case. And so a separate judge has now stalled the October 2nd start of that trial. And there's going to be an order likely sometime in the coming week that's going to let us know if that's actually going to be underway. But the problem is now Letitia James is saying to this court, like, hey, we need to really nail down this start date because all of these other forthcoming dates in these criminal cases, again, the Trump Organization one is, basically saying, he inflated his assets. It's a civil case. And they're just worried that, they don't want the civil case to screw up all the other deadlines and things like that are happening in his 4 criminal cases.
So one of the things that has sort of been an issue is that Trump is an active candidate for office. And as such, even though this is sort of the way he would be regardless of what he was doing, on the campaign trail, he has a lot to say about these legal cases. And in some of these cases, he's been restricted. He's ostensibly restricted in what he's supposed to really be discussing. But he's been pretty vocal and verbose even about all of his legal trials. So where do we stand with maybe gag rules, gag orders, and what would the implications of a stricter one in any of these cases, what would it potentially be?
Yeah, so by the time someone out there is watching this video, there might be a gag order in place in Trump's DC case. The reason why that is because Jack Smith, who he's described as a deranged prosecutor and made,
sick.
He's sick, twisted.
Just look at his face, you can see he's sick.
Right. Yeah, all these name callings, it goes beyond the name calling specifically because, he's basically alleged that he's just being treated rather impartially and going, on social media and saying things that, might rile up some supporters to potentially, act out in a way that, would be, potentially violent. We don't want to see that happen. So there's this understanding that Judge Chutkan, who's looking at this case right now, is going to be making some kind of order about a narrow gag, and so what that could be is, essentially saying like, you can't make, direct statements in this case about like, the people involved, like about witnesses and things of that sort, because we don't want to have something that like taints the jury, perhaps whenever we eventually get to that point. And she's said in previous hearings that the more that Trump speaks out in ways that we see this as improper, the faster that this will actually go to trial. So it's basically, some people have said like, oh, is he going to go to jail if he violates a gag order or something like that? The legal experts I've talked to are not as bullish on that. They're just saying like, the worst that could come out of this is that he has to face a jury sooner rather than later. That seems to be the leverage that the judge is trying to do on this, because I don't think it would be. I think most people would say it wouldn't be appropriate to like throw him in jail at this point. I mean, I think he's been going up in the polls every time he gets indicted. I think that would probably could have a similar effect.
Sure.
I don't want to speculate, but
sure. Well, he's not the only one who's facing legal charges. He's not the only indicted person. Hunter Biden, the son of President Joe Biden, who, if Trump wins the Republican nomination, is likely to have a rematch with in the 2024 presidential election. Hunter Biden is facing charges. What do we know about his case right now?
So his case, what we know is that he was indicted on these 3 felony gun charges. They all pertain to lying on a federal ATF form 4473. Hopefully I got that number right. And essentially it was pertaining to saying that he wasn't addicted to any illegal drugs at the time. We know that he has had problems in the past. He's been vocal in his memoir. And so after that infamous moment back in July, whenever the plea deal fell apart in Delaware, now we're looking at special counsel David Weiss now, who's brought these charges, and there could potentially be more tax charges on the way. But looking specifically at the gun charges, now Hunter Biden's counsel is in complete defense mode. They're saying we're going to take this all the way up if we have to, and they seem to be pretty confident that the Second Amendment is on their side, or at least precedent that is sort of given way to some favorable Second Amendment rulings in the past could be on their side over this gun charge. It's really interesting because Joe Biden vehemently disagreed with the Supreme Court's 2022 Bruin decision, which struck down New York's 100-year concealed carry permit regime. Joe Biden, said it was an awful decision, essentially.
The Biden Justice Department and the Biden administration Solicitor General have been on the opposite side on some of these cases.
Yeah. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag on, are we, actually going to see Hunter Biden, face any charges? Because like the Fifth Circuit took a look at the statute that is, currently being used against him right now, and the Fifth Circuit basically invalidated it earlier this summer. So obviously this is a different jurisdiction. The Fifth Circuit doesn't cover Delaware, but they're definitely going to be looking at precedent in other circuit courts in the country, and they're going to say, well, we think that the Supreme Court precedent is on our side. Now, the real question, I guess, everyone wants to know is, when are we going to see Hunter Biden back in court? And that is going to happen on October 3rd. It's going to be happening alongside Trump's first, legal escapades in New York with Letitia James. So that's going to be kind of a busy week looking back and forth at that. And Hunter Biden is going to have to appear in court physically, because a judge decided this week that he wasn't going to give Hunter Biden the relief that he sought to be virtually there. It's kind of a pandemic time thing, and whenever defendants could show up and appear virtually. There's been some instances where Trump has appeared and he was given the option to just appear virtually, but he showed up instead. And so in this case, Hunter Biden has to go and make the appearance there.
An unlikely Second Amendment poster child. Thank you, Kaelan.
Thank you.
You can read Kaelan and the rest of our policy team's coverage at washingtonexaminer.com.